Guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Uh, I had this stupid idea that if I moved to Oklahoma, the winters wouldn't be as cold as they were in Utah. But when you're out here on the plains and a big old Siberian swell or whatever they're calling it comes over the freaking North Pole, you get whacked and you don't have those big mountains on either side of you to kind of mitigate the force of it. So it is really freaking cold outside. And the shop, which does have some heating, but it's not on. I don't have that unit dialed in yet. All I've got is this old school Euro style heater and my hot wife over my shoulder here to keep me warm. I am feeling it. So without any further ado, Merry Christmas. You can see the drawing I've got there on the marker board. It's a car on fire, and there is a reason for that. 20 years ago today, December 23rd, 2002, I and a bunch of other erstwhile juvenile delinquents from Henderson, Nevada, got busted by Henderson's finest for engaging in, I don't even know what the final charge was, because I didn't get pinged for it other than, just being there and I guess being an accessory. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up a little bit. Henderson right now is big, booming. They've got a minor league hockey team. It's on the rise. The town already looks different than it did when I last lived there several years ago. It's very, very different from how it looked when I grew up. My little brother's still there. He's been a firefighter for about 15 years. And, he updates us on it from time to time. My graduating class specifically, class of '02, was in a window where if you went to one of the public schools, if you went to Basic or Foothill, you graduated with somebody of the last name Weedman. The Weedmans are a huge family, 10 kids, great people, love them to death. Mary Weedman and my mom are still good friends. I went to high school with 3 Weedmans. With 10 kids, you figure you're going to line up with a handful of them. One of them graduated in my class, one of them was a year ahead. But one of them who was 2 years behind me was the class clown, the school clown, just one of the funniest and most interesting kids you'd ever meet. His name was Mylan. And if this kid got a wacky idea in his head, he'd just go for it. He was the prankster. It wasn't like he was the kid that you'd look at him, you'd interact with him for a while, and you'd think like, oh, this kid's trying to get attention. He just liked to have fun. In fact, when I told this story, in a communications class in college in 2007, so right around the 5-year anniversary of this event, we had to give different types of speeches. One of them was, I can't even remember the word for it. Basically, you tell a story and it's got to flow and it's got to be in a certain time and all that. I get up in front of this class at the College of Southern Nevada, because it's not a community college, totally was. And I mentioned Mylan's name at the beginning of the story, and this one kid, Corey, in the back of the class, he just laughs because he's like, whatever this is, it's going to be good. Mylan was involved. 2 days before Christmas, I had already graduated high school at this point. I'd been a graduate for about 6 months. My little brother was a sophomore. He gets a phone call. He says, hey, Mylan's got a car and he's trying to get rid of it. He's going to take it out to the desert and blow it up. Can you give me a ride? I was like, dude, I want to be involved in this. But there was no way that our parents were going to sign off on it, so we decided to fudge the details, massage the truth a little bit, say we were going to go do some last-minute Christmas shopping. Maybe run down to the Walmart down on Lake Mead in Boulder. We meet up instead at Mission Hills Park. Nothing good happens at Mission Hills Park after dark. Maybe less so now, but definitely not back then. And I remember thinking, after the fact, it's a good thing that I drove a Nissan pickup at the time for my parents. We worked for their home flipping business on the side. And I thought, it's a good thing that the truck is full of carpet padding right now, because if it hadn't been, I would have taken it to this and I would have wanted to, be cool and drive the truck out into the desert and would have done something stupid and wrecked it and my dad would have killed me. So instead we drove the minivan up there. And since it was the minivan, I was like, oh, I won't off-road, I'll ride with somebody else. 20 some odd people there. A lot of them were from the school's cross-country team. I think that's how Ian heard about it. And they knew those hills very well. They did a lot of their training in Mission Hills out in the desert on those trails. So even though it was dark, those kids knew where they were going. Mylan tells us what's going on. He bought this Peugeot at the Goodbye Auto Auction for about $100. It broke down hard to get a piece for it because it's a Peugeot. If you're not familiar with that brand, it's the French version of a Kia, all right? Like, it's just a crap car. You don't put any money into it. You should get a discount on buying it so that you can afford to get the next one when the first one breaks. They're just crap. You can't find parts for it. It wasn't worth the money to fix it. So Mylan was trying to get rid of it, trying to flip it for $200 or $300. He paid $100 for it when it was working. All right, it was never going to happen. Man, it is cold in here. So a couple of us get together with pickup trucks, and man, as I think back to it now, I think of some other brother duos that showed up. I'm not going to say any last names here. They're probably all professional, respectable people with businesses to operate. And anyway, we string it up behind one kid's Toyota and drag it out into the desert. Now, there's this fancy neighborhood that's probably got developments behind it now at this point, but it was the edge of town. You drive through this fancy neighborhood, the asphalt turns to dirt, and you can follow this access road farther and farther out into the desert. It was around 9 o'clock, maybe 9:30 at night when we drive out there, and I remember on our way seeing an older gentleman walking his dog. I think it was he who called the cops on us. While we're there, Mylan's getting everything ready in the back of the pickup truck. He's got gas cans, he's got road flares, he's got a shotgun, he's got a video camera. Somehow I ended up on camera duty. I don't have a copy of this to this day. For you kids watching it and not understanding what technology was like back then, digital cameras were very expensive, but you could find secondhand VHS cameras pretty easily. Mylan, being Mylan, had one for filming his antics. And he had me on it, and I was recording the whole thing. As we're getting it set up, we see out in the dark, out in the desert, headlights driving down what we know to be a dirt road. And somebody just figured it was probably, Land Services, BLM is out there. That's the Bureau of Land Management, not the other thing. And we're like, well, there's a pipeline road or something. There was some kind of utility road. We figured they were just watching it. It was a regular winter patrol because we were smart. We knew what was going on. Anyway, Mylan lights the car on fire. It goes, and then it goes, and it goes, and it becomes this big old thing. It explodes, but not, in a Hollywood sense. It flares up, and then it goes out. About a mile away, we see the headlights turn around on that access road, and we're thinking, oh crap, it's time to get moving. So a bunch of us jump into the back of the 3 or 4 trucks that had gone out there, and I am just hoping that we get back to the neighborhood, we get back to town. Once we get there, I can just jump out of this truck and go get lost in the neighborhood for a little while. The police are going to be concerned with the vehicles. They're not going to be concerned with us on foot. A couple of the kids didn't even get in the trucks. These were the cross-country guys that, like I said, they knew the trails out there. They knew where to go and what to do. So they fled on foot. They got away with it. They weren't there for the big roundup that was to come. But as we're flying along down this road, and I'm in the bed of some big Dodge 3/4 ton, holding on to the evidence camera in one side and the bed of the truck in the other. Me being the religious person that I am, started praying. God's too busy laughing at me and answering the prayers from the cops saying, hey, let us catch these kids. It's almost Christmas. And we must be going, 40, 50 miles an hour. And, these roads aren't flat. I'm holding on, hoping we make it. I start to see the headlights catching up. There's red lights on them, red and blues on them. We're not going to make it. NGMI, right, kids? But I'm still thinking we're almost back to the asphalt. Once we get there, we'll be okay. Barricade. 3 cop Tahoes waiting for us. And they're all there in their beef stoppers, and they got their billy clubs out and their flashlights. And one guy, he's on a couple of scoops of pre-workout, and he's cussing and get out, line up on the megaphone. They got crap. They got us. They line us all up. They make us sit there on the cold ground while one of them walks up and down the line with a little notepad and pen, and what's your name? How old are you? What's your address? And I, at this time, did not know where my brother was. I'd heard that he was in the group, but I wasn't next to him. I wasn't close to him. Cop comes down the line. By the time he gets to me, he's already interviewed my brother, gotten his name, and all that stuff. He gets my name, and he goes, oh, Bradley. He goes, you got a little brother here, don't you, tonight? I was like, yeah. He goes, you're setting a real good example for him. I'm like, dude, whatever. I say that now, but I was really upset with myself at the time because I was getting ready to go on a mission for my church, and you've got to have a clean background for that sort of thing. And it's like, I really hope that this doesn't screw up my ability to serve a mission that was very important to me. And the cop gets my age, asks your birth date and all that stuff, and he goes, "Hey, you got a cell phone on you?" Yeah, it wasn't very common for teens to have cell phones. I didn't even have a flip phone. I had just the Nokia straight up phone. All it could do was make phone calls. Imagine that. And he goes, "All right, well, go ahead and call your parents to come pick you up." I'm like, we are, as the calendar goes, 26 hours away from Christmas, and I'm 18. And I got to call my parents. I got to call the landline, which I know my parents are at home in their bedroom right now, and the phone is on mom's side of the bed. This is not the terrorist negotiation that you want to make right now for your own life. You really hope dad picks up the phone. Dad does not pick up the phone. So I say it in as plain terms as I can. "Yeah, Mom, we got," I didn't say arrested. I'm pretty sure I didn't say arrested because I wasn't in cuffs or anything, but not arrested, but I was there. Said, "We got stopped by the police and they told me that you have to come pick us up." And Mom goes off, and I'm like, just say the words that will cause the action where she comes and picks us up and we can go home and I can deal with the emotional side of it later. Just go do it. Parents start showing up and kids start getting yelled at. My mom and dad get out of their car, and Mom is... I'm not taking anything away from her here. I'm not saying that she was unjustified in the level of intensity of her response, but she gets out and she's on one and she's chewing out everybody because, of course, these are all kids from school and church. She knows who they are, and laying into them. And my dad is like, he gets out and he's looking at us. He's like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "Yeah, I screwed up." We get, and this is the best part of it. I almost forgot this. Right before my parents showed up, or right after I made the phone call, Officer Notepad comes back by and he says, "Oh, wait, I just saw that you're 18 years old. I didn't have to have you call your parents. I could have just had you take your brother." I was like, "Hell is wrong with you? It's almost Christmas." Really should have been saying that to myself, but alas, here we are. So we're getting the third degree from Mom on the entire drive home. And justifiably so. I say this with some joviality all now, but back in the moment of it all, it was like Louis L'Amour said, adventure is just a romantic name for trouble. It's not an adventure until you get back to town, back to civilization, back to the tavern when you can tell the story with your guys about how you're crossing sand dunes and you're dehydrated and you're hoping you'll survive and all that. When you're in the moment, when you're in the thick of it, it sucks. It's when it's over that you can tell the story. And as much as it sucked to get busted in the moment, I'm grateful in retrospect that Mylon engineered this entire thing because it is a great story. It's something adventurous that I got to do, and it was an experience that I learned from, and I grew through it. What Officer Notepad said did hang with me for a very long time. I had to set a better example for my brother. Even though I doubt he was looking to me as an example, it was incumbent upon me as the older brother to be that example for him just in case he ever needed it. Between the phone call and my parents showing up, the cops had, identified Mylon as the ringleader of all these things, and they were interviewing him off to the side, and we couldn't hear what they were saying. The only thing that gave us hope was that all of a sudden a bunch of laughter broke out amongst the cops, and we heard one of them say very loudly, "86 Peugeot." It's like, okay, it's not like we were dragging something valuable out there. It was he was able to mitigate the damage, and from what I understand, he had to surrender his license for 6 months and takes a fire safety course, and that got him out of the woods. To this day, he is still legend and still a hero to all of us. And I'll reiterate, as much trouble as it was for the couple of days after, I mean, like I said, we're right before Christmas. The next day was Christmas Eve, and I had to go spend like 10 hours working on a house that we were flipping with my dad. It was the most awkward, quiet 10 hours. I couldn't say anything. I was just doing whatever I was told to do. I was going to be, the good obedient son as we're, hanging drywall or whatever. But I think back to it now, and it's it's the kind of good trouble that I'm glad I was able to get into. Nobody got hurt, nobody got killed, we all learned a lesson, and now we got a great story. 10 years ago, 2012, when we hit the 10-year anniversary of this story, I remember writing about it on my old blog, and it was cool, and it was fun and everything, and now as we hit the 20-year anniversary, the story's got a little bit more weight to it, and this is where I'm going to get a little bit more serious for just a second. Even without social media and all that stuff, I think it would be at least possible to stay in touch with the friends that I grew up with, the young men from my community, and keep track of their lives. But I'm grateful that we've got it, because I'm able to keep a little bit closer of an ear to the ground, just to know what's going on in their lives and stay in touch. Earlier this year, over the summer, we got some bad news about Mylan. He wound up in the hospital. It was very, very serious. He was sick. They didn't know what it was. Once they identified what it was bad, and then they found extra details about it, and it was even worse than they thought. And he was hanging by a thread there for a couple of weeks. The short version is that he'd ended up with a leukemia diagnosis. Kind of came out of nowhere. It went through this phase where it spread fast, and he was having all kinds of bad symptoms. He went to urgent care. They didn't know what it was. They just told him to go home and sleep it off. It got worse and worse. He ended up having to be life flighted from Vegas to Salt Lake. Mylan is a husband of, 8, 9, 10 years. He and his wife are expecting their 7th child right now. And God bless his hero angel wife for what she's been able to endure, being however many months pregnant with number 7, taking care of the other 6 kids, and making all the phone calls that she's got to, and managing not just the technical side and the logistical side, but the emotional side of this kind of difficult trial with her husband, with her eternal companion. We started hearing about everything Mylan and his wife and kids were going through, and I just thought, it would suck for it to be anybody, but it hurts in a very unique way because it's him. He's the guy that never fails to get a laugh out of somebody. And it's brutal to think of, what my youth would have been like without him dipping in and out here and there and finding some good, goofy, fun memory to give me and everybody else around us. So on that note, I'm going to put in the video description down below a link to a crowdfunding thing that they've got set up. I think it's through GoFundMe, because obviously something like this is crazy expensive. They had to uproot themselves from Southern Nevada and go move to Utah for 6 months, one of those cities with not the best rent situation right now, because they've got to live within a certain distance of the U of U Medical Center while he undergoes treatment. Things are looking up, last I heard, but this is just never an easy process, and that's all on top of the fact that, like I said, Brianna is expecting number 7. So, me being the not Daddy Warbucks, Mr. Moneybags guy that I am, I wanted to do this not to just share this goofy story and get a laugh out of you, but hopefully kind of boost the signal and do what I can with the small platform that I have here to help out a friend. So, if you're in a position, by all means, please check that out and see if you can do something to help out the Weedmans. And if not, I at least hope that you got some joy out of this story the way that I did from all my childhood memories with my friend. Hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. Check back next week. I'm going to have my best of year review for the 10 best books that I read in 2022. And we'll catch you next time. Drive safe. See you out there.